Howdy friends, let's catch up. Thought I would talk about my recent market experiences and how I'm preparing for the next one, which is in less than 2 weeks. And weirdly enough, I didn't realize that it was exactly a year later, but I had a pretty bad, not experience with the market in particular. I didn't end up doing it, but the whole lead up to it and ultimately canceling it was not great. So I have whole vlogs about that, but I am going to talk about what I'm doing differently and what I've learned, how I've applied that over the past few markets. So if you are doing craft shows and stuff, or you want to start doing it, maybe you can get some ideas from me. I'm not an expert. I know people who have done markets like every single weekend, pretty much all year long. They'll travel up and down the coast, like go to Florida in the winter and stuff like that. I don't have the capacity to do that yet. It sounds like a pretty cool thing to do. There's a stray, not really a stray, but our neighbors have an outdoor cat that looks exactly like mine, and whenever I see it outside, I'm like, oh. So I guess I'll start kind of at the beginning in a process with like how markets go or how I plan them and do them. My goal for this week is to get most things restocked. So today is a Tuesday, and then the market is not this coming Saturday, but the next Saturday. It's a veg fest. I've done another veg fest in a completely different state in the past, and I did very well at it despite having a not good display. So I'm hoping with the upgraded display and more products and stuff available that I will, I'll bring home the vegan bacon. I am stocking up on things that sold out last weekend. So this past Saturday, I did a market that wasn't a veg fest. It was just a craft fair, but it was in one of those outdoor shopping malls, and it worked very well. I'm very frustrated. Not about that, but like previously in markets that I've done, I didn't keep that great of records of like how much money I made. I found for the veg fest I did before in like 2021, I found my sales, how many items I sold, and like how many of each specific SKU number I sold, but I don't know the exact dollar amount. I mean, I don't know where I kept track of that because I had like an Excel inventory sheet, and now I use Airtable. I tried to copy most of that over into Airtable, but it's just took too long, and it's not like super necessary information, but I wish I had it. But as far as I remember, I think this market that I did this past weekend beat my biggest market thus far of my career. In terms of revenue, I think the fee for the Veg Fest I did was lower. Like I was saying in the last video, the one this past weekend was my third one since we moved here to Maryland, even though that one was in Virginia. The first one I did was a very local one, pretty small and not that many people. It was also really freaking hot. I think it was in July. But after the booth fee and all of my expenses, I count the profit for an event as the revenue minus the booth fee and also minus the material and labor cost for the items that I sold. So my profit for the first one was like $5, which better than nothing. I got to test my setup out, and it was my first run with some new fixtures that I had. The second one, I can't remember. Okay, so the second one I made a little less than $100 profit. Then 2 Saturdays ago, I went back to the one that I did first, and I made a little bit more. I made like a little less than $30 from that one. So I made about $25 more than the first time, and I had some good contacts though. I had like 3 repeat customers from the first time, so that was interesting. And the one I did this past weekend, it was put on by the same people as the second one I did, but it was just in a different location. Like they kind of do one a month in different locations in this area. My profit for that one was about $330. That's quite a bit better than the previous ones, and something that I have not done before that I didn't consider. I like to look at numbers of things, even though sometimes I don't quite know exactly what to do with them, but this could influence my decisions in the future to do an event again. And I think to make this a little more useful, I wish I had the numbers of attendees that were there. I'm not sure if either of these kept track of that. I looked at the vendor fee per order that I made. So vendor fee per sale. Like this past weekend, the vendor fee for the past one was $165, and I made, how many sales? Scrolling through this page here, 27 sales for 44 items, and my average order value for that one was about $30, which is on par with my Etsy and Shopify, but the vendor fee per order was $6.10. And that's a higher fee than I would pay per Etsy or Shopify order. So obviously the more sales you get, the less that's going to be, but it puts into perspective what it would have taken to get that many sales online. I did make a few improvements to this one. Actually, I'll skip that and talk about like how I pick markets in the first place. And while I'm doing that, I have my bundle. I sold a crap ton of assorted packs of my non-paper towels, and I need to make some more because I do not have enough to bring to the next one. So I have this box of just like leftovers. And I have a pile here. I don't know if these are leftover or oopsies. Yeah. Dang it. When I'm packaging my product, I make separate piles of ones that are like going to go into a full pack that I can sell at regular price, and then ones that are a little bit messed up that I'll sell as I'll either keep them for myself or sell them as discounted packs later on. I'll wait until I have a bunch of those and list them all at once. But I don't remember which pile was which because things have gotten moved around. So I guess I'll have to just look at them and figure it out. I have thought about, I've seen people do this with their like non-paper towels or similar items where they're like small individual that they sell in packs, is having just at in-person things, having people kind of build their own packs so everything is individual. I just feel like that's going to get chaotic real quick because stuff is going to get unfolded. People are going to unfold it to look at it. I just don't know about that. I did have quite a few people want an assortment, but then they'll be looking through the assortments like, oh, I want this print but not that one, and then I'll let them kind of mix and match, and it works out pretty well. If you have any thoughts about that, or if you sell similar things, then let me know how you would go about it. Because I thought about maybe keeping those kind of behind the counter and like in a bin like this, and if people want a certain one, then they can do that. But then other people walking by are going to see me doing that, and it's going to get chaotic again. So I'm not sure. Oh, sweet. I needed a display of these ones and I have them already flattened out. Okay. Now my cat's meowing because he hears me talking, that's why. I think he thinks I just disappear when I come upstairs to work. And if he hears me talking, he's like, oh, you're there. So when I look for a market in particular, I look for first things that are going to be a better fit for my target audience. Although I have noticed at markets that my in-person people that are drawn to my products in person are quite different than online, which is very interesting. It's something you should probably take notice of. I know, buddy. Yeah, you can't come in here. Sorry. He's 6 months old and he will climb and chew on everything. Well, just because he wants my attention, he doesn't normally just chew on stuff to be a booger. Sir, excuse me. Sir, those are oatmeal cookies. They're not treats. And this is why I put them in a bowl. But once he's older and can just sit and chill, he can come in here, but for now I can't work with trying to make sure he's not getting into things that he shouldn't be. And I've been a vegan for over 10 years myself, so kind of fits with the whole theme. And there's not usually a whole lot of non-food vendors at Veg Fests. Well, I do know of a few people that go around like the entire country and do that in a van, which I think is really freaking cool. Like I was mentioning earlier, I just don't have the capacity for that at the moment, because most Veg Fests I come across are going to have quite a few attendees and draw pretty big crowds, unless it's like a brand new one or something that's kind of smaller. So we moved to this area and I looked for the major cities within driving distance and saw if and when they had a Veg Fest and signed up for those. The only one that I was able to get this year was the one in Richmond, Virginia. You want to start looking for events in like January, February, I've noticed. That's usually when they'll start taking applications, because depending on where you live, if you're not like in Florida or Arizona or something where it's always warm, there's not going to be events in the winter necessarily unless they're indoors. Then you'd have to apply for those like way in advance. So no matter what time of year, if you're watching this later on or if it's right now, just make a list of events that you think you would like to do regardless of when they are. There's a lot of events happening like over the next few weeks because of the fall, so it's too late for the vast majority of those. You want to sign up for them, you know, when the signups are open. Occasionally they'll say they have a cancellation and need people, but the big events that you actually want to be at are going to have a wait list anyways, so you're probably not going to get in last minute. And depending on for your business, this could be like Comic-Cons or art conventions and things like that. It's not necessarily a Veg Fest, but just something related to your products that you sell and where your target audience is going to be. I admit it's a lot easier if you're near big cities. There's all kinds of events. There's like night markets, there's oddities events, there's like Halloween themed ones, and there's ones that are more geared toward kids or parents or I don't know, just different things like that. Somebody asked me if I did some kind of like mom's event last year, and I was like, well, no, I just moved here, but I'm also not a mom and my stuff isn't like entirely geared toward kids. But if you make kids clothing or something, then that might be something to look at. And then there's also the Christmas markets. Like there are the Christkindl, I think that's how you say it. I've never heard somebody say it out loud, never been to one, but there's quite a few in this general area in like the Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania kind of area, where it's like a month-long Christmas market. So it's basically you get a storefront for a month. It's a very, very high rent that I've noticed, but they also might have like shorter term. You don't have to be there all month, because I think the hours are super long. But if you can save up all year and get a space at one of those, especially if your products are like super giftable, like candles or candy, or you make Christmas ornaments, that would be a great option. Where I find the vast majority of them is on Facebook. That's mainly the reason that I use Facebook anymore. And then once you start looking at them, Facebook is going to give you ads and suggestions for more. So it's been pretty easy to find a lot of markets around here. And even if the date is too soon to sign up, or it's already passed or something, you can put on your radar, like follow the organizer's Facebook page, and that way you'll be able to see when they open up applications for the next one. And a lot of times, even if the applications are closed or like it's past the deadline, you can still look at their application and see if it's something that you would want to do in the future, kind of save yourself some work later on. I've seen some with ridiculous rules of like what you can and can't do, and like ridiculous fees. I just will not put those on my list for next year. Like if they require you to jump through hoops to be able to get a spot, like you never know. So watch it, make sure before you apply. And some of them I've noticed require you to mail an application. Like it's 2024. Seriously. The ones that I have seen that require you to mail an application are very prestigious and have a lot of attendees, so it must be working for them. And when you're looking at Facebook, it will usually show you how many people are interested in the event. And that's a pretty good indication of how many people are going to be there. Usually more people show up than say they will on Facebook. Once I pick one that I want to look at more closely, I'll start with pictures of previous events. Usually when they make the event page for this year's event, they'll use pictures from the last year. So you want to see kind of what the vibe is and if you think your products would fit in there, and also what your setup kind of looks like. So if you are a beginner and you have a pretty small setup, like with just table space or something, and then you're seeing photos of people with these like extravagant, you know, tents with like the curtains and all of the fancy stuff, like I'm not there yet, so that tells me that if I submit a picture of my booth, they're probably going to be judging it based on those. Because that's another thing, if you are unfamiliar, some craft shows are juried, which means that they are going to have a panel of people. Sometimes it's just one or like 2 or 3 people that look at applications, and they'll look at your products, your previous event, booth photos, or, in spoiler alert, if you have not done an event yet, you can make a fake one, like somewhere in your house, and tell them that. You know, take a picture of it and say, hey, I haven't done an event, but this is what my setup would look like. And the whole point of a jury is to make sure that there's not too many people with like the same category. So if, you know, you go to an event and there's like 5 different people selling candles, probably not good for your sales, because somebody's gonna be like, oh, you have candles here, but I can see over there they also have candles, so I wonder what they have, if it's better than yours, and they're probably not going to stop at your booth. Sometimes they'll have like a max of maybe 2 vendors if they're kind of different enough that are in the same category. Like I had a few aprons that I made at my booth for this past event, and the person like across the aisle and like maybe 3 or 4 down I saw also had aprons, because you can see them from far away, and I was like, dang it. But I think her booth was like professional. She had like the waterfall racks with all of her aprons, and she had like other like table runners and stuff. It wasn't like we were competing for our primary purpose. My main product is my non-paper towels. Just happened to make aprons also, so I think that was okay. And my aprons were a very different style from hers. Hers were like the straight front, typical butcher style aprons, I think, and mine are more of the skirted, flared variety that are upcycled from shirts, and hers weren't. So another big thing that is a massive red flag and assures that I will not submit an application or even consider an event is if they allow direct sales vendors. So direct sales, I'm talking like the pyramid scheme, MLM, whatever you want to call it, like Scentsy, paparazzi, and all that stuff. I will not bother with an event like that because it cheapens the market. I'm just being honest. It cheapens the market. I don't think they belong in handmade markets, because the stuff is not handmade, obviously. Although markets that accept those are getting fewer and more far between, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't run into too many of them, but you never know. You want to make sure that, like, most of the time they'll explicitly say on their application that they don't accept direct sales. Or if they do accept them, they will say that they only accept one of each type, so like 1 Scentsy and 1 paparazzi or whatever, so avoid those. Because like, think about it, if you're going to a market for artisans, to find the quality handmade stuff by local people, and then somebody next to them is selling like their dollar jewelry from possibly toxic sources made in China, like that's a no for me. And don't be afraid to apply to ones that you don't think you'll get into. I have gotten into some that I'm like, I don't think I'm good enough for this, but they let me in. Because if your stuff is unique and you have something of value to add, they might accept you anyways, even if your booth display or your pictures or whatever are not like super great. And most of the time, the good event organizers are going to want a mixture of new vendors and old ones, so that people aren't bored every single year they come and the same exact people are there. And almost all the time, you're gonna have to pay your fee up front, unless it's like a recurring event. Sometimes I've had events take the payment like day of, or say if you can just pay it by the event date or something, but usually you're gonna have to pay it quite far in advance. Like as soon as they tell you that you're accepted, you're gonna have to pay it right then, because otherwise they have a list of other people waiting. So you want to secure your spot immediately. And like, don't make them have to chase you down, because that's not a good look. And one trick to searching that I think a lot of people miss when they're looking for events to do, don't just search craft fair, because you're going to just get the high school PTA ones or like the church parking lot ones, which can be okay if you're just starting out, but those are not really the ones that you're gonna want to do long-term professionally. Search things like craft market or artisan market or handmade market, stuff like that, because craft fair just by itself is not really what they're called anymore. And depending on the area that you live in, there are like specific cultural markets as well. There's like certain heritage markets. There's Italian ones, there's Latino ones, there are ones for BIPOC, there are ones for LGBT, like all kinds of different things, and Pride as well, because yeah, LGBT, that'd be like Pride, whatever that is in your town. And obviously if that applies to you, then you could try setting up there. There's a creator that I watch on YouTube that I cannot remember her name right now, because it's been a minute since I've watched one of her videos, but she made bank at Pride in wherever she was at, like somewhere out west. So right now at this point of the year, I am looking at Facebook pretty regularly and seeing the ads that I get for markets that are coming up, so that way I can put them on my list to apply for next year, because those applications are going to start coming out in like January or February. And start saving up as well, so put back a portion of your sales to go toward the booth fees and for your setup. I am always improving mine. I do it a little bit each time, so that way I don't go broke and go crazy trying to do it all at once like I did last year. Like for example, I did this market this past weekend, and I'm going to take that $165 that I paid for that booth fee and put it back into my booth fee fund for next events for upcoming events. Yeah, you probably won't make much of a profit the first several times, but I think that's okay as long as you're not like bleeding money trying to put into doing new stuff and like changing it all the time and just trying events that don't work. Eventually you'll get there, start making money, and you'll make some local clientele, especially if you do custom things, building those connections and meeting other vendors. I almost forgot to mention this. So you can tell a lot about a market by the other vendors that are there. I do this in two different ways. So occasionally I will see another vendor near me at an event, because most of the time I don't have the ability to go around and look. But if I see somebody nearby that would kind of fit in with my niche, or my customers would also maybe like their stuff, I will go to their social media, give them a follow, and see what other events they have done or are doing next, and get an idea of ones that I could try to sign up for, especially ones that are kind of at your level or seem like they're a little bit ahead as far as sales and like their level of professionalism and the quality of their stuff and whatnot. You'll kind of get a vibe of what I mean if you do a few events and you see people, especially right next to you, if they're like doing well or seem like they don't know what the heck they're doing. That's not to throw shade, I just have seen people that do or seemingly do a lot of events, like they'll talk about it, but then they're like not quite professional about it yet, like as far as their demeanor or how they handle transactions or how they set up their booth and stuff like that. But then if it's an event that you haven't done or you're trying to check out, they will usually post a list of the vendors that are going to be there. And I kind of scan through and see if any are like any of the business names kind of jump out at me as being like eco-friendly or kind of in the same like sewing genre as I am, and I will go check out their pages and see kind of what the vibe is and see what kind of markets that they're doing as well. But don't let that one discourage you from signing up for a market, because even if you stumble across somebody that is selling the exact same thing as you, even though you are probably a little bit different, but if they're selling like the exact same category, then they might not sign up for the one next year, or they just might want to give somebody else a chance in that category. So don't let that discourage you from trying to sign up if you have seen somebody else doing the market that does the same thing as you. So you've applied and been accepted to a market. Now what happens? You gotta make sure that you meet their criteria for your setup first things first. Like before you even think about your product that you're gonna bring and how you're gonna lay out your booth, make sure that you have their requirements. So sometimes for more bigger, well-known events, they're going to require you to have a white tent. Not all of them. I have not been to any so far that have required this, but I would just get a white tent to begin with, because you might eventually come across one that requires it. And this is because it is distracting to other customers when, you know, you have like a bright purple tent like all the way down there and you're like, oh, I wonder what they got, and they kind of just focus on that and don't really see the other ones. You know, it's fair to the other vendors if you all have the same color tent. Now, I've never seen any requirements about like the branding on it, so like it can have, you know, like mine says Easy Up because I got it from the Easy Up tent company, and they may or may not have, I don't think they're going to ban you from having like your banner on the outside of the tent, but I don't know. Another thing about the tent that is very, very, very important, even like, listen to me, even if they don't tell you that you have to have weights on your tent, you have to have weights on your tent. That is a non-negotiable. All of the events that I've done in this area, because it's kind of can get windy here, they will require you to have at least 80 pounds total, so like 20 pounds per leg. And that's because your like tents are pretty lightweight, so a gust of wind is going to take them off the ground. And that has happened to me. One time I was in a hurry to get my stuff together. I had those kettlebell weights that I was going to use because I didn't have sandbags at the time, and my stepdad had some that I could borrow, so I was going to just tie those to the tent. Completely forgot them, and what do you know, my freaking tent was off the ground like halfway through the event. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want your stuff to get damaged, or obviously for somebody else to get hurt. And there is event insurance. I have bought it a few times, but even then I don't think they're going to cover negligence. It is important that you do everything you can to avoid accidents. In some places where it is extremely windy, like if you're in Chicago or something, they might require more weight than that. But a couple weeks ago, the one I did, it got pretty windy, and I had my back wall up because the sun was coming right in there and it was burning me. So I put the wall up behind me, and the wind was just coming in and just going up and lifting the tent up, and I was like trying to lift the wall piece, you know, the canvas thing, and to try to let the wind go through instead of like catching it. It was scary for a second, but it never lifted off the ground, thankfully, because of the weights. And the one event I did, it was outside in the courtyard between like a bunch of buildings, and it kind of created a wind tunnel that was going straight into my booth, and if I didn't have weights then, would have been a disaster. It blew a bunch of stuff off of my table. I broke some stuff because I brought some props and decorations that I thought were plastic but were glass. So don't do that either. If you have things that could blow away, get like glue dots or like double-sided tape to stick them down. Another requirement that I've been seeing fairly recently just in this area is fire code, like fire retardant tents. Mine is not, so I have to be careful about which events that I do. I'm going to try to get at least a few more out of mine. It's pretty old at this point. I had to re-waterproof it because it rained at an event recently and leaked. So most of the time those tents aren't waterproof to begin with, so you'll want to spray them with the waterproofer spray like Scotch Guard or something like that, and do it. I know a lot of people that do it like every year just to touch it up and make sure that it doesn't leak, because that could ruin your product and your customers aren't going to want to come in if they're getting wet. So you want to have weights for sure, and also some kind of sidewalls. I would say even if you never intend on using them, sidewalls are pretty important to have on hand. You can fold them up, roll them up pretty small in your stuff, because if it does start raining or something, then you can put one up just to be safe, and because, you know, rain doesn't just come straight down. Or if the sun is blaring and frying you alive like it has done to me a few times, you can put one up just on one side if you need to. I prefer having a sidewall in the back, especially if there are other vendors like behind me, because I've had a lot of occasions where people will come up. If the vendor is not touching the backside of my tent, then customers will just walk that way and like go behind me, and that's a safety issue for me. I don't like that at all. So having a back kind of, it also blocks the view so people aren't looking past your products to whatever's on the other side. Like this past Saturday, there's those new IKEA like planning stores where it's like a really small IKEA in a shopping center, and you can plan your kitchen and whatnot in there. And people were coming into my booth and being like, oh, IKEA, that's back there. It was like right behind me. So they were looking at the IKEA store and talking about going there instead of looking at my stuff. Not everyone did that, but it was quite a bit. And it kind of got annoying after a while. And having a back wall will stop people from walking through your booth. So I would try to, especially if you're outdoors and there's stuff behind you, try to block the way through. I had like just a little bit of space because I like to, where I stand with my little checkout stand thingy, try to give people space, you know, to look at stuff. I don't want to be like breathing down their neck. So I had it a little bit farther away from my table, but it was just enough for most people to squeeze through. So people were going through instead of, like, my booth was on the end, so they could have just walked around, but they went straight through instead. So that's a safety issue because if they knock something over trying to get through, it can hurt somebody or break your stuff, obviously. But sidewalls can also hurt your visibility, so people can see your stuff from all sides. So I have my aprons hanging on the side of my booth, and they can see them, especially because I was on the end, they could see them from far away. If I had a wall there, they couldn't see them. So it just depends where you're at and kind of the layout of the space you're in, which you never know for sure until you actually get there. So having them just in case is a huge help. And I know some people that use like clear shower curtains to do that, or have a banner behind you so it's not like a full wall. You can still kind of see, but it's clear that that is the back of a booth if there's a big banner in the way. That's something I need to do because I have a small banner and I had a big one, but it's outdated because I've changed some stuff around, logo and that kind of stuff. So you want a big banner, possibly spanning the entire length of the back of your booth, that tells what your stuff is and your business name and whatnot in case people are looking for you, or they'll see like, oh, you make reusable stuff, so they want to go there. So make sure that you are following the guidelines of the event, because if you're setting up and they come around and they see that you don't have weights, they will probably kick you out if they require it, because it is a liability thing. And depending on how big your display is or how many pieces, like fixtures you have, you want to see if you're allowed to spill over your booth or not. Most of the time you are not allowed to go outside of your 10 by 10 space. That's something that you can be flexible about, so you can kind of pull things in if you're not allowed to spill over. Or I've had sometimes where, actually just this past weekend, where somebody didn't show up in my row, so we were allowed to scoot down and kind of spill out of our booths if we wanted to. But that's just to be considerate of other people. So, you know, if your stuff is kind of in the way of people seeing somebody else's booth, that's not cool. So just be careful about that and make sure that you're allowed to do that. But anything that fits inside of your booth space is usually fair game. And if you're like me and panic about stuff like this, about like your setup and whatnot and like what you should do, I would just look at pictures of past events and see what people have done. And don't ask the organizers, because they're probably not going to give you a straight answer on that. So at the end of the day, it's your job to create your display, not theirs. Like, that's not really what they're there for. They're there to help you get the space and bring the customers. I'm not going to talk too much about the actual setup. That's going to vary greatly on what your items are. General rules are to go vertical. Absolutely avoid having everything just flat on a table, because people are going to walk right by your booth. If your stuff is flat and they have to like come up and do this to look at what it is, they need to see it from far away and not have to, you know, strain to see what the stuff is. Even if that's just little risers on the table, it's better than nothing. You don't have to have like full walls with stuff hanging on the wall. Something to kind of bring it up to eye level or close to it. And make sure that it's clear what your stuff actually is from somebody just walking past your booth. So like from maybe 10 feet away or so. Because if you have something like t-shirts and they're just folded and laid on a table, that could be anything. That could be aprons, could be pillowcases, they don't know. So have them like hung up somewhere or something on the back of your booth. Your tent has things like the support beams. You can hang stuff from there, easy peasy. That's like the cheapest way. You just need clothes hangers. Just again, be mindful of the person next to you if it's gonna like get in their way. Especially in the wind, I was afraid that my aprons were gonna blow into the next person's booth. Thankfully, I wasn't next to anybody right there. If you need help on like how to set up a display or how to create one, I have the slight, I don't want to say advantage, but like the experience of doing merchandising for a craft store back in the day. I went around and set up a few new stores for them, and I learned a lot about merchandising from that. So I don't always remember to apply it, but whenever I think about it, it helps a lot. What also has helped me a lot, especially for like craft fairs in particular, is the website Made Urban. If you've looked at Pinterest for craft fair ideas, you've probably come across some of their pins, and their advice is usually helpful. You just have to apply it to your product and try not to be closed-minded about it. Like if they're telling you how to display bags, take that information and use that to apply it to something you sell that may not be bags. Their tips about color grouping and flow of things has really helped mine a lot. And I was having trouble with the straw pouches that I make. So I make reusable straw pouches, and I had them hung on the pegboard, but people couldn't really tell what they were. And I used glue dots to stick straws on the pegboard next to them and had an arrow saying like those are straw pouches. But I started selling those during COVID, or before COVID actually, I remember this now. And I had the straws in a jar on the table and like next to the pouches, and people were like, okay, these are straws. I can just buy a straw or I can get the pouch. When I stopped putting out the jar of straws after COVID, because, you know, people don't want to touch, you know, I didn't sell as many because people weren't making the association that they were straw pouches. Most people thought they were like headbands or something, which makes sense because they were underneath the scrunchies. So my mistake. That sounded like sarcasm. That wasn't. Like literally, that was my mistake. I'll put a picture of it up here, but I decided to go with this basket that I had that will hang on the pegboard, and then I put a jar inside of the basket with the straws in it, and then kind of arranged the pouches in that basket as well, and I used peg hooks between them to keep them upright. That was the problem. I had them in a basket like that before, but I couldn't keep them upright, but I had a big brain moment and put the peg hooks between them, and that worked pretty well. People were interested in them, and they understood what they were, and I had a few ranty conversations with people about how much they hate paper straws, and people were like pulling their straws out of their cups that were disintegrated, talking about the metal straws and stuff. So universal hatred of paper straws. But that is something that I've noticed is different about this area, because the area that I'm in Maryland, it's a more progressive area. I'll say recycling is a huge thing here. Like being eco-friendly is such a huge thing. There is a tax on plastic bags, for example. I am from Kentucky and I just moved from Georgia in like suburban areas. That was not a thing. Nobody was using paper straws. Nobody was like banning plastic bags or even thought about it in those areas. It just wasn't really much of a thing, and people were kind of like, ugh, like you hippie, sometimes when I would set up at markets. So that could end up helping or hurting my sales of some things, because people here know what they are, but they don't really need them because there are already alternatives around. And make sure that your prices are visible, whether you put a sign on the table. People will ask you anyways, even if you have a sign on the table or if you price each individual item, they're going to ask anyways. It's just deal with it. I did have to take down one of my pricing signs. So I sell and also display them on these wooden holders just to show like at eye level that they are reusable paper towels, because they're on a paper towel holder. People identify that roll shape as paper towels, and that has helped tremendously, by the way, because like just folded up on a table, they could be napkins, they could be anything. So the non-paper towels are $22 for a 10-pack, and the holders are $14. I put like non-paper towel holders, or like wooden holders or something like that, $14. Well, people thought, they just saw 14 and thought that that's how much they were. I was like, no. But then like I put the 22 for the non-paper towels, and they assume that it's for like the whole thing, even though that's clearly a display and the actual product is underneath. So you're gonna have people ask anyways. It's not that big of a deal. Just make it as clear as you can. I found myself doing this when I go to markets as well. I'm like, oh, how much is this thing? Oh, it literally says right there, I'm sorry. Another big thing that I learned, not from my own mistakes, but from other people's, I went to a market, this is why I thought of this, I was drinking coffee. I bought this tumbler, like a sublimation printed tumbler from somebody at the Punk Flea Market in South Carolina, in Columbia, South Carolina. I don't recall seeing a banner or anything on their booth. They could have had one, but they didn't give me a business card. There wasn't any kind of sticker on the box that they gave me the tumbler in. So I have no idea what their business name was, how to find them on social media or anything. And at the same market, I don't know if it was the same one or like a different year, but I also, that shirt that you see me wear, the Yikes tank top, that's like the blue tie-dye kind of thing, I got that there as well. They gave me a sticker with their business name on it, but I have tried every which way of typing it in to like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everything. I can't find their business. So I don't know if they even exist on like social media or if they just have a different name. So that is two businesses that I can't shout out or support again because I don't know where to find them. So make sure, like with every purchase, that your products are, at the very least, you're giving like a business card or something with the order, or even better if you can brand your actual product. So have like a nice looking tag or sticker or something to put on the product. That way people know where they got it from and what your business name is. Then for the actual setting up part, I would suggest that you practice setting your stuff up. So like assembling any shelves that you have and putting things together, opening up your tent, make sure you know how it works. Because like this past weekend, I had to help somebody open their tent because they didn't know how, which I get if you live in an apartment or something and you don't have space to do that, but just at least like read the instructions first and make sure that it's good and all the pieces are there, because you don't want to end up with something missing out of the package, like some kind of a screw or something. You never know what could go wrong, so just make sure that you open it up and know how it works. Preferably well enough in advance, not the day before, so that way if you need to go buy a new tent like in the last minute, you can do that. And figure out where your product is going to be. So set up each big table as its own unit. So if you have like 2 tables, for example, they could be repositioned anywhere in the booth. That's easy to move around, but figure out what you want to put on each one and how the products are going to be laid out. That's going to take you the longest when you're setting up. Most of the time you're only going to have 2 hours, maybe. Over 2 hours is quite generous because you can't get there way too early before they've even started laying out the space. Putting your tent up and, you know, unfolding the table legs and whatnot doesn't take very long. You can move them around easily, but figure out the flow of your products, so where you're going to put things. Made Urban has pretty good information about that. So figure all of that out ahead of time, because you're going to go crazy and freak out on the day of if you're trying to figure all that out, and it's going to end up not looking good, and you're going to spend all day trying to figure it out, or spend all day freaking out about it, or being self-conscious and like trying to fix it while people are trying to shop. Don't do that. Oh, have tablecloths as well. Most are going to require you to have tablecloths. It just looks so unprofessional if you don't have one, especially if you don't have ones that go all the way to the ground, because you're going to have stuff that you need to store back there, like your bags and bins that you bring your product in. You got to make sure those are hidden. It just looks clunky if you don't. Probably more important than anything else is being able to accept money. So you want to have change for cash. Now, even more so than during COVID, when I would do those outdoor farmers markets, like in 2021, even less people use cash now than we're using cash, like when they were afraid of getting COVID still. That's a joke. I know a lot of people are still worried about getting COVID, but you know what I mean. So you want to have change, and you want to have some kind of apron or like pockets to put it in. I had a cash box for a while. When I made my new checkout stand, I didn't consider the cash box when I designed it, so I couldn't open it all the way, and then I couldn't use the little money clips, so I just scrapped the cash box and made myself a little apron with zip pockets. You can just use a fanny pack, whatever you already have. But that also kind of signifies you as like the vendor. You know, you don't look just like a random person standing in there. And you need to have some kind of a card reader situation. Now, if you don't have time, like if this is the last minute, you don't have time to get a card reader or figure out something like that, if you have a Venmo business account, let me just double check, but I'm pretty sure when I signed up for it, I could accept tap on this phone, and it's an older phone. Yeah, so if you have the Venmo business account, you can accept tap payments, like contactless payments with your phone, like anywhere. You don't have to have any hardware. I mean, my phone is the Galaxy 21. I got this in 2021, but I don't know if like older phones are able to do that. And it tells me right here it's 2.29% plus 9 cents per tap. Let me see what the Shopify's transaction fee is. So Shopify's, which was what I use, the Shopify tap and chip, it is 2.9% plus 30 cents. So it is actually cheaper to take Venmo payments, even though that's, for most people, that's a pretty negligible amount. If you're in a pinch and you need to take cards, and if you forgot your card reader or something, or you know, don't have one in the first place and forgot to get one, or like when I ordered mine, it was on back order, so it took a while to get here. But yeah, Venmo is 2.29 plus 9 cents, and I've had people just pay me through Venmo because I have my Venmo QR code on my a little sign next to the card reader, which you do want to have visible as well. It's a little sign, or small, that says that you take cards or Venmo or PayPal or Cash App or whatever, because people are going to want to know that like right away. They don't want to have to ask. So on the regular Venmo, if somebody just scans your QR code or types in your username and pays you from that, it's 1.9% plus 10 cents. So it is cheaper if you take directly from their Venmo, but they have to have a Venmo account. So if they don't have a Venmo account, then you can accept their tap card payment, which I think almost all cards, like debit and credit cards, now have the tap feature. When I first started doing markets, I used Square, but that was when, like, kind of before chip was really a thing, so it would be a swipe, and that is not as secure as like chip or tap. So, and I had my Square linked to my Etsy, because at that point I only had Etsy and I wanted it to deduct from my Etsy inventory because I didn't really have enough stuff to have two different inventories counted. But I don't know if they've changed this. Just watch out if you use Square, which does integrate with Etsy still. At the time that I used it, they would charge you the Etsy fee, like the 6.5%, which at the time was 5%, when you made a sale in person. It'll also boost your sales count, so it'll count as a sale. When you look at your shop page, it says like such and such shop, X number of sales, X number of reviews. It'll increase that when you make a sale in person. I would honestly not do that at this point. Or if you use Square, just use their reader and manually input things. Or you can have your inventory for markets specifically in Square, like the Square app or the Square inventory app. I don't know if they merged them or not. It's been a while since I've used it, but you can have your inventory in there and have it just where you can tap on the item instead of having to type it in every time. And that way you remember what you sold, so you have a record of each individual item that's sold. So what I do now is, since I have Shopify, I have their tap and chip reader. I have it like double-sided Velcroed to my checkout stand and have it in front of a little sign with my QR code for Venmo and what payment methods I accept. When you buy the reader, most of them are going to come with a little sticker and you can put on a sign that says what it is and like what payment methods it accepts. And if you use Shopify, you just need to get the Shopify POS app and link it to your Shopify. Do this beforehand, not the day of, okay? Go into your Shopify dashboard on your computer and set it up that way. And you'll want to make a separate, well, if you want to make a separate location for your market stock, say you want to keep separate inventories, which I highly recommend if you have like decent regular sales, because this really screwed me last time, like last year when I had that market I had to cancel, because my business went viral on TikTok like 3 weeks before I had a market, and I sold out before I could even get like stuff pulled from the website to put into the market, because I was like, well, what if I end up not having to do the market, or like it gets canceled, then I don't make these sales, so I'm just gonna wait and pull inventory then. It was too late. It kind of worked out because I ended up not being able to do the market. When I first started using the Shopify tap and chip, I would mark cash sales on paper just so I can remember what I sold and, you know, not wonder why this item was missing when I counted inventory later. But then I'd have to go back after the market and deduct that from the inventory. So what I started doing was you can just ring up an order on the Shopify POS and then cash it out. So you could do that immediately after the sale, or you could write it down and do that again, like at some point, like a slow point during the sale, and just mark it off of your list. You just want to make sure that you're taking as many payment methods as you possibly can. You're going to lose a lot of sales if you are cash only, because most people don't have cash and it's a pain to go get cash. They're probably just not going to. Like if they say I'm going to go get cash and come back, they're probably not coming back. But the night before you set up, you want to make sure that your card reader is charged and that it doesn't need to have like a software update, because that happened to me at the second to last one I did. It was not working right like at all, and it wouldn't connect, and it eventually was like, oh, it needs a software update. Well, I don't have signal here. It's enough to process transactions and maybe get text messages and phone calls, but if I'm downloading stuff, it's not great. So it took a while to update the software or whatever on the card reader. So thankfully that was one of the slower ones. If it was a busy one, I would have been freaking out. And bring a portable battery charger just in case, and have cables for everything you need. Luckily, everything that I have takes the same charger as my phone, the USB-C. So the card reader also takes that. And I have a portable fan that also is charged by USB-C, so I just need one cord. So moving on from taking payments, I have trouble personally with talking to people that come into the booth. I don't like having a spiel like some people do. They'll say like, oh, welcome to such and such, I make blah 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 blah. I don't like doing that. I don't really like that as a customer, so I try to be present but casual. Most of the time, my opening line is going to be if they're looking at the non-paper towels for a little too long, they're like going back and forth. I can tell they're trying to decide which one they want. I'll say, oh, if you can't decide on which print you want, I have assorted packs if you want to take a look at those. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll start asking me questions about it. So like once I initiate the conversation, then they'll start talking more about it. If they make eye contact right away, I'll say hello, but sometimes they're just like, scoot in and look at stuff, like they kind of are just browsing, you know. I won't really say anything, or if like I'll say thank you when they leave or something like that. But despite how hard it is, I have found that a big percentage of the people that I talk to actually buy something, and that is kind of true for me as a customer as well. I know one time I was at like a flea market and somebody had 3D printed stuff, the fidget toys, which are pretty freaking cool, and I was looking for a present for somebody for Christmas, and I saw something I thought they would like, but I was like, I don't know about that, and I just kind of was walking along, and they said hi, they said hello to me, and then I was like, oh hi, and then I looked down again, I was like, wait a minute, that's the thing, I was looking at that, I was gonna get something. So that like break in attention sometimes can get you to stop and look. But a lot of the questions that I get about the non-paper towels are like, can you use them for this, or what do you use them for? I don't go down a list of like every single thing you could ever use it for, because that would be kind of overwhelming, but I just give a few suggestions. Like I might mention that they're microwave safe, so you can put them over a bowl that you don't want to splatter or something like that. Most of the time I try to be just casual about it, like kind of mention something, or like I'll give them a compliment if they kind of pass by me. Like somebody had a really cool purse and I complimented them on that. I think as you do more events, you'll get better at that, engaging with people in that way. You want to make it clear that you are sort of the master of your craft, even if you don't think you are, but you know, you made the stuff, so you should know all about it, and be willing to talk with people about it, and about, in my case, sustainability and stuff like that. Like I was saying earlier with getting into a rant with somebody about how terrible paper straws are. That was longer than I anticipated, talking about market specifically. So I have like a week and a half until my next one. I need to get going on that. I have most product that I need for it. I'm catering my product to the market, so I am trying to go through my stash of fabric and find things that vegans would like. I have this veggie print. Oh, I do. No way. Oh my god, I didn't see that. So I have this veggie print fabric that I make the spork and straw pouches with. I used to have scrunchies out of it, but I sold out of them. So I was gonna make some more scrunchies with it, and I thought I was out of this turtle print, but there it is. It's hiding under this one. So I might make scrunchies out of this, even though I haven't made them out of it before, just for that. And I have sold a lot of straw pouches with the turtle print on it, which was my intention, the Save the Turtles thing. So I just don't have any of the lining. So do I want to order it because I'm trying to phase those out, or maybe just keep the turtle print because that's what sells the most? Dang, I really wish I knew I had this. I also did not look at my inventory. I have this fabric inventoried as far as how much I actually have of it, like yardage wise. If I would have looked at that, I would have seen it, but I didn't do that either. At my last market, I actually met somebody that designed fabric, like the print patterns. I should have gotten her spoonflower name. I've got blueberries too. Oh my god. I sell quite a few scrunchies with the blueberry. And I have a ton of this sprinkles print. I've sold quite a few scrunchies of that as well. A lot of people wonder how much product you should take to a market. That's like probably the hardest decision, honestly. If you have done a few or more than a few and kind of have an idea of how much you're going to sell. Like if I decide to do one that's local that I didn't make a whole lot at before, I'm not going to bring very much at all. Just it's less for me to carry around. But the next ones are going to be in November and December, because I'm not doing the October one because it's the same date as the Veg Fest. But if I do stuff closer to the holidays, then I'm going to focus more on maybe gift sets and stuff like that. But for the Veg Fest, I am looking for my food related ones and animal related ones. I have some farm animal stuff from before. I don't have many non-paper towels with farm animal. I have a bunch of chicken ones. I had cow ones for a very short time. They sold out pretty quick and I haven't seen the fabric again. I had goat ones that didn't sell at all. The print was just kind of, it was a little blah. like the color contrast between the goats in the background was just a little off and looked really bad in pictures, so I didn't sell many of those. I didn't restock them. But I really appreciate all of the support in the comments from the last video. I knew what I was doing with that title, but I didn't really expect like so much commiseration from people who are in my situation. I kind of thought maybe most of people that were watching were just starting, but it's pretty clear that a lot of us are kind of in the same boat as me, where you've been doing it for a while, it's kind of your full-time job, and then all of a sudden it's just... So, yeah. But I'm very glad that I am starting to do these in-person events, because those are seeming better than trying to do everything online. Because I think like marketing on TikTok and Instagram and whatever, or anywhere online, people aren't really going there to spend money, you know, but if they go to a market or like a craft fair, artisan market, whatever, they're going there with the intention that they're probably going to be spending money. So they're going to be prepared for that. Especially now this time of year and getting closer to Christmas, where they're going to be looking for gifts. Because I've had quite a few people that take a card and like, hey, I'm not buying right now, but I'm definitely interested when I start buying Christmas gifts. So I'm like, okay, sweet. But because of being able to do these markets and getting income that way, and not having to spend so much time and effort for very little to no return on social media, I am a bit more comfortable now sharing some like details about my business on YouTube. So I am kind of going to mix less so of the actual like specific I'm a guru and know everything about Etsy tips, which I never claimed to know everything about Etsy, but less of that and more of just sharing my experience as somebody that's also trying to make it, because it's kind of been my goal all along, even though sometimes that stuff of like giving, you know, exact advice about things kind of did very well on this channel. But several of the comments that I got on that video were very reassuring that I am still upholding my original goal for this channel, which was to sort of be like your Etsy coworker who has been here for a while and has been doing the job for a bit and just giving you advice, and not so much or not at all like promising you that you're going to make a ton of money and selling you courses and all that bullshit. But now I feel the freedom to share more of my process than I did before, because I was mostly just scared that my Etsy sales were going to be hurt, but they're already dead. So, oh shoot, I have one Etsy order that I need to get out today. Actually, it's 3 o'clock, so I've still got time. Now that most of my markets are over and my setup is like most of the way there, I'm not having to spend like 12 hours a day working on it anymore, because I had to sand and stain and assemble things and change them around, and that took forever. But again, thank you so much for your kind words on my last video. So going forward, I am going to kind of mix the sewing with the usual craft business talk and see how it goes, because that's also something that I can change and adapt as I go along, and trying not to be as rigid as I used to be. So today's October 10th. It's a Thursday. I thought I was going to post this before the Veg Fest, and I ended up not doing that because I thought that was not a wise use of my time. This material that I'm cutting now is my single most best seller of non-paper towels ever, and for pretty good reason. The darker ones tend to do better because of staining, and it has, you know, it's like Halloweenish but not too on the nose of like jack-o'-lanterns or something. And about this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier in the year, in September, I was selling these faster than I could make them. I had to put them on pre-order, and I would order so much of the material. And kind of the same thing is happening this year as far as getting it. So I ordered 56 yards expecting to get, I don't know, several bolts of it, but it all came in really small pieces. Some of them were a yard, some of them were a bolt of 8 yards. It was a little bit wild. And sometimes it comes really wrinkled and I can't even lay it flat to cut it without it being jagged afterwards, so I have to iron it first. I don't remember if I talked about what I was going to do for my setup for this past Veg Fest. I didn't really do anything completely different, so I did end up using both sides of my new pegboard stand. I'll put in a video here if you want to pause what you're doing and look. I'll put in a video of my whole setup. I didn't go around to the back of the pegboard stand because there's people coming by. I was very, very lucky at this one to have, so I got there at like 8:30 and it started at 12, so I had about 3.5 hours to set up, which was amazing. Usually you're lucky to get like 2, and I was one of the first ones there. It was quiet. That was the second Veg Fest I've ever done, and I remember that I mentioned earlier in this video that I don't remember or couldn't find the stats from the last Veg Fest I did, or I guess the first one you could say. But I found it. It was like in my notebook randomly. I have this one notebook that I've been using since the inception of this business when it used to be crochet. And somewhere in there I had a little like tiny paragraph about the sales from that, and it was like right in the $800 range. I did not have the stats that I have now as far as profit and all that. I do know what sold from an old spreadsheet, but other than that, I'm not really sure. I also had inventory somewhere, like of what I brought. I did not bring much. I don't know what. Like, I could have sold a lot more if I had brought more stock of some things. I wish I could set up the iron and stuff this way, but I really don't have room. Because, like, if I start everything here, cut it here, sew it there, and then bring it back to package it up, but now I'm, like, back and forth a little bit. I'm working out the flaws in the system. But at the Veg Fest this past weekend, I made over 900, almost 1,000. I can't seem to crack that $1,000 mark. I really hope it happens at this big holiday fair that I signed up for, that I maybe should have looked into a little bit more before I sent the invoice payment. I've done quite a few one-day craft fairs at this point. I have done two-day ones, but they kind of like both got rained out on the second day, so it is what it is. And they were on farms that were closed off, so it was okay leaving stuff overnight. But I am getting ready to do, it's not my next show, I have two in between, but the Annapolis Holiday Market in Annapolis, Maryland. How I find craft shows, I think I mentioned it before, but I just stalk Facebook, and then eventually it'll start giving you ads for other craft fairs. And I prefer ones that I know are going to be juried and highly attended, because I would rather spend several $100s on a booth where I know I'm going to make a lot of money versus setting up multiple times for like less than $50 and not even making 100. So, and I had saw that one, and it, like, I just assumed because there was so many people interested in it, like interested in attending that event, that they were full and weren't accepting any more applications, and I was wrong. I followed their Facebook page anyways, just in case they were still accepting vendors, or they'll announce when they have the dates for the next year and then have people apply. So I did that, not expecting to see that they were still accepting vendors. And I did not know how much the fee was. They made a post saying if you know any quality artisan vendors that are looking for, or that are available to, set up for the Annapolis Holiday Market, then send them our way or send them to our website. And I went to the website, filled out their contact form, and just gave like a short little pitch of like what I sell and stuff and where I've been a vendor before. They sent me the application and accepted me in. So I think how I got in was also the reason why I didn't apply in the first place. They had a previous, like a list of their previous vendors, and someone else had non-paper towels and similar things. I was like, well, even if they allow two people of that same category, I do not want to be in a market where somebody else is selling the exact same thing as I am. And I was like, let me just check out their page. This is past vendors, maybe they're not going to be there or something. And sure enough, I checked out their website and they closed their business because they moved away or something. So hopefully there won't be anybody else there with the same thing. I'm going to iron this on here. There's like 12 layers of flannel. I think this cutting mat will be fine. If I cut it like that, you probably can't even see it because of this pattern, but if I cut it like that, the edge is going to be jagged because it's so messed up all the way through probably the rest of the bolt, which is great. And this Veg Fest was in Richmond, which is nowhere near Annapolis, but people kept asking me if I had set up like at a farmer's market or something before, so I think people have asked me that here locally as well. I'm like 2 hours away from Richmond. So I think maybe there's somebody, at least multiple people, that do something similar. It can be kind of scary because you have direct competition selling almost the exact same thing. But that lets me know that there is demand for this kind of product around if there's multiple people selling the same thing. Annapolis, Maryland, if you didn't know, is on the ocean. I honestly can't remember at this moment if it's like on a port or if it's actually on the water, you know what I mean? But I know for sure it's going to be very cold. And they did suggest bringing a flameless portable heater that's not electric, so like a propane kind of thing. I have never done a market in the dead of winter like that. I also assume it's going to be windy because they require 40 pounds per tent leg versus pretty much every other event that I've seen around here requires 20 pounds per leg. And this is the first one that I've seen that is very strict about having an insurance policy. I don't know if I should take that as a good thing, that they're being proactive, or if they had a lot of incidents in the past. We're definitely feeling the cold here now, and I am like low-key trying to acclimate myself because we just lived in Georgia for 2 years and it was cold like maybe twice. And my plan for right now was to get all of this stuff cut and sewn and just get all my stuff I know is going to be non-paper towels made up already. That way I don't have to do it later, and get it out of the way so I don't have piles of cut pieces, piles of uncut fabric, and pieces like halfway done. Just I want to get them all done and out of the way. And then I can move on to other products that I have. And then I've got about 2.5 weeks until my next show, and it is indoors, which was it's in a parking garage, which seemed a little sketchy, but it's a good idea. Like, this place is kind of renting out the first, like the ground floor of the parking garage, and we're setting up there. We don't need tents, but it will be still outdoors, so I'm assuming that it's going to be pretty chilly. We'll not have electricity for lights or anything. It should be as well lit as a parking garage can be, which is probably not very good. My first priority now is getting these non-paper towels made. I posted these on TikTok last night. I did not get much. I'm sure everyone else was also watching the hurricane stuff. They usually post new products or the restocks on Fridays, so maybe I'll post something else on Friday just to kind of see if it gets anywhere. But for my type of products and something more practical like soaps and stuff like that, it's beneficial to be in a regular spot. So if people are looking for something like that, then they know where to find you because they've seen you before, like at a farmer's market or something. Then that's a double-edged sword for me because we move so much. It's like I have to work extra hard to make long-term connections and get people to my website because I might not be there the next season. Then if they aren't connected with me online, they're not going to know that. They'll just think I up and disappeared. The night before the Veg Fest, I actually, I didn't know who I was anymore because I was fully packed up, ready to go. The night before, I made breakfast for the next morning and everything. But if you're in a cold climate or a place where it gets cold regularly and you do events outside, let me know if you have any suggestions on what to do, especially if it's going to be like 10, 11, maybe 12 hours a day for 4 days. We can have electric lights, but we cannot have electric heaters for hopefully obvious reasons. You can't run electric heaters on extension cords or power strips. I mean, you can, but you should not. So they're gonna have to be flameless propane heaters, which I am looking at some. Like the Buddy heater, we have a couple cans of propane for a camping stove, and there's some that run off of that. They'd be pretty small and out of the way. And I was looking at photos of past booths just to kind of see what the vibe was like, and it was quite different from what I expected. So it looked like people, I might need to go find those vendors and see if they have photos of their setups at other events, because they look small. Like they have their 10 by 10 tent, but then a 6-foot table like right up at the edge, and then they sit behind it and that's it. Like just the stuff that's on the table, that's it. So it's very different from what I'm used to. So normally if you have a lot of traffic, you want room for people to come in and look at stuff instead of being able to just walk right by you if maybe nothing like really catches their eye. And I think just a table would not catch many people's eyes. But then again, I think maybe that kind of setup is to sort of be lean, I guess, with your product offering and just bring your best sellers that you have a lot of. And also, maybe because of the heating situation, or you don't want customers to be able to get too close to that heater and like knock it over or bump into it or something. I thought about getting one of those, like having the heater and then have one of those fireplace gate things in front of it, just so somebody doesn't like accidentally bump into it or touch it, and knock it over and catch the whole place on fire. I don't know. It's probably not going to happen because they have tip sensors. But if you have any thoughts on that, let me know, because my stuff, I don't know if I should only have like a select few types of non-paper towels and only one display and not both, or have my 2 tables but have that be the only display, like just those 2 tables with the shelves on them. Because you also want people to be able to walk in out of the rain for that, in that situation, especially because it's going to be cold. And I have also noticed around here that people don't seem to be as afraid of the rain as other places that I've been to. Like they don't run screaming and crying back to the car if they're out shopping or something. But that is it for today. I'll be back again with more craft fair prep kind of stuff. It should be before that next one. So once I get all the stuff made up, I'll show working on my set up, which isn't going to be much except for my banner, but I'm going to make my own and cut out and embroider the letters by machine because it's going to take forever by hand, and we'll see how it goes. I will share that when the time comes. So I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.